Vamos. Fuerte.
President Trump has invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to get the TDA gang members out of our country. But a Democrat judge thinks otherwise. Please support the channel by subscribing and hitting that like button.
The Aliens Enemy Act allows this administration to target different groups of individuals, and they've said that they're going to focus on Tren de Aragua. And obviously, the president has designated this group as well as other groups as a foreign terrorist organization. So what the administration is really saying is, look, we're going to take the worst of the worst, and if we apprehend them here in the United States, then we want the ability to remove them out of the country as quickly and expeditiously as possible. And we're going to utilize this authority to do it. And look, I think most Americans would say, yes, let's get those individuals out of this country. They should have never been here in the first place.
So this is another example of President Trump taking action, doing what he said he was going to do. He's putting America first. He's putting the family members of every victim that had been murdered or raped by a TDA gang member first, unlike the previous administration. Tren de Aragua is an enemy. It has been named a terrorist organization. The act allows President Trump to expedite the deportation of these criminals from our country. But of course, no, the Democrats don't see it that way, because one woke activist judge has already blocked the order.
Clearly, they're making some moves, trying to claiming the U.S. is being invaded at this point by Venezuelan gangs, and that's why they're invoking this rarely used act. But within 2 hours of this announcement this afternoon, a federal judge blocked it with a temporary restraining order. Now, the White House claims the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, or TDA, is perpetrating, attempting, and threatening an invasion or predatory incursion against the United States. And yes, while there have been arrests of TDA gang members in Colorado and in New York in the last year, many view this move as an attempt by the Trump administration to accelerate deportations. A federal judge this afternoon shut it down before it really ever began, even ordering planes that were carrying non-citizens that are literally in the air right now to turn around and return to the U.S. Even before the Trump administration announced it would invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, there were signs this was coming, and there were questions about the legality.
So think of this. You have groups like ACLU asking these Democrat judges to stop President Trump from deporting gang members who are illegal aliens in our country who have been committing crimes and murders. How does anyone justify that? These people are more concerned about the rights of criminal, illegal migrants than the safety of American citizens. We all hear people talk in the media about the hill that Democrats will die on. I ask you this. Is this the hill that Democrats will die on?
The Trump administration flying 2 planes carrying immigrants to El Salvador. This video shared by El Salvador's president shows alleged members of the Tren de Aragua gang arriving there over the weekend. The ACLU suing the Trump administration, leading to an emergency hearing on Saturday. Sources say the planes took off during the hearing before the judge ruled any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States.
We are not saying at this point that the government defied the court order, but we are saying there are serious reasons to potentially think that they did.
Sources tell ABC News the administration chose to ignore the judge's directive to turn the planes around.
Just to be clear, this order would have allowed the administration to expedite the deportations so they can remove known terrorist threats instead of allowing them to remain in these communities and commit further crimes. Because if you remember, Denver or some other sanctuary city decides to not even allow the ICE agents to go into the local jails to pick up these illegal immigrants. They don't allow them in.
What should we expect from the hearing, and why is this such an important ruling?
So the Alien Enemies Act is, as you say, a 1789 or 98 federal law that allows the federal government to deport people without due process. And it's significant because it's only been invoked 3 times in the United States history, and by its terms, it's only supposed to apply in cases of war or invasion. And the administration is appearing to be poised to make the outlandish claim that the presence of unauthorized individuals in the United States constitutes an invasion from Venezuela. This is an outlandish assertion of power. It reeks of racism and xenophobia, and it would allow the federal government to, again, throw these people out of the country with no process whatsoever. I think the federal judge recognized that the administration was gearing up to do this and potentially do it without judicial blessing, in which case it might be too late to actually get these people back into the country. And so he ordered the federal government to pause, knock it off, until he had the time to actually evaluate the merits of the legal claims, which seemed quite strong.
I mean, she's lying about everything. I mean, it's not outlandish to consider everything that happened over the last 4 years an invasion, especially when these gang members were committing crimes in American cities. And we know what the left is going to do. They're going to cry and say that everything is racist and he's an authoritarian. The problem is with that message, it's the results. They just don't show it. The majority of Americans support this move. We just don't want these people in our country that are a danger to our citizens. Of all the issues that Democrats can disagree with Trump on, this should not be one of them. This is one we should find common ground on because it has hurt everyday Americans. Think of Laken Riley and many others. These are not primary school teachers. These are the most evil people that belong to the most violent gangs on the planet. And I just cannot say it loud enough that this is the wrong side for the Democrats to be on. It's a losing issue for them. This is how bad these people are.
TDA, I've been investigating and tracking just one Venezuelan migrant over the past couple of weeks, a suspected TDA gang member in Chicago. Pedro Colmenares was ordered deported in 2022 under Biden, yet he was arrested and released 3 separate times in Chicago. ICE tried to get a hold of him, but Sanctuary Cook County denied a detainer, and he was just arrested a 4th time. He is a murder suspect, and he was arrested recently for kidnapping and sexually assaulting a woman.
So after seeing that, we have to bring the question back in. How is there an activist judge that can issue a court order like this and control the executive branch? Jasmine Crockett has an answer.
Well, my argument is that we already have tools that are available to remove undocumented violent people from our country. And so the idea that you want to go into a zombie law, this is kind of like what we saw in Arizona when they decided to revive a zombie law around abortion. It is the fact that we can't trust this administration to actually use a scalpel, but instead they love to use a butcher knife on things. And so giving them this wide latitude to just kind of go across and just claim that anybody is anything is wrong. And so we do have courts, we do have processes, we do have laws, and we should just go ahead and use those. There's a reason that nobody else has decided to go back until into Adam's times in order to try to find ways to make sure that we can keep our country safe.
Maybe Jasmine Crockett could answer why none of these tools to remove violent illegal immigrants were used under Joe Biden's administration. In fact, why were these criminals being released back into communities multiple times instead of being deported? And there's no zombie law being revived here. He's just enforcing law and order. Now let's watch a clip where it shows the gang members landing in El Salvador. Some of the visuals in that video tell such a compelling story. Everyday Trump voters are cheering for this.
Well, it's another situation where a judge has really taken on the role of sort of the executive branch. And I think the judge's defense would be, well, we're just stopping this so the merits, it could be heard on the merits, because once these people have been removed, they never would have a chance to have it heard on the merits. But it does concern me when they're turning flights around and things like that that create possible safety issues. But I think one of the bigger points here is the whole reason we have this problem is because the Biden administration admitted these gang members into the country and put them on temporary protective status, and they wined them and dined them while they were here. And you know, some of the results of it are Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungary, which we've talked about a lot on these shows. But it really is a disgrace because this is the only way they can deport them, because some of them have status because of the Biden administration, even though they're gang members. So, you know, the Biden administration created this problem, this emergency, and the Trump administration is simply trying to protect public safety and national security here.
Public opinion overwhelmingly supports Trump getting these people out of the country. They don't care how it's done, as long as it gets done. Through the eyes of everyday Americans, these people in the media are defending these gang members. Democrats are just concerned on criticizing every little thing that Trump does, not the results. They're just using scare tactics.
Well, there's very disturbing reporting in the New York Times just this morning suggesting, not concluding, but suggesting that that may in fact have happened. And that Judge Boasberg, the trial court judge who issued this temporary restraining order and said, you can't remove people. And he also said, to the extent that their planes in the air, they need to come back. You cannot remove people because I'm finding that this is improper. It's unclear at this point whether, in fact, that order was complied with. The doomsday scenario for this country is the idea that you would just ignore a court order. At that point, there is no rule of law in this country. Yeah. You're a law of the jungle. So that's a thing to keep an eye on as to whether that in fact happened here.
A couple of things to know about the timeline here. When the judge said the airplanes need to turn around, he didn't write that in his official order. He verbally said it. So is that still legal to demand that the Trump administration have to abide by it? Technically, no. This is Jim Jordan telling us what Congress is doing to push back on it.
And now this guy is saying, oh, let the hardened criminals come back to America. Makes no sense. This is why the American people support what President Trump is doing and are fed up with these judges. Now, we took some action a couple of weeks ago in our committee. We said these federal judges, these district federal judges who issue some kind of injunction, some kind of hearing, or some kind of decision, I should say, that decision should only apply to the parties of the case in that respective jurisdiction, not have nationwide implications. So that's a step we took in committee 2 weeks ago to help deal with this problem. And we're willing to look at everything else as well, because the American people are fed up with the judge in Timbuktu, California, saying something that then applies to the entire country.
And, of course, the entire country now will have to watch to see if these hardened criminals or these alleged Venezuela Tren de Aragua members, gang members, are going to be back on the streets in our big cities.
Congress needs to follow through on this. The whole of Trump's agenda is going to get derailed if they can't pass legislation that can support his executive orders. As we know, they're not permanent. So while President Trump is taking action to keep America safe, Democrats are pushing the same talking points you've heard throughout this video, that President Trump somehow is not following the law and acting against the interest of American citizens. So the question I have for you is, why do you believe that Democrats are choosing to fight Trump on this particular issue? We know who the TDA gang are. We know how dangerous they are. We know what they've done to American citizens across the nation. So what logic is there for this judge to prevent the president from doing this? Please leave your comments in the section below. Now, I believe Democrats are on the wrong side of every issue at the moment, including the protests we see going on against Elon Musk and Tesla. Now, if you missed how it all started, you can catch up in the next video because it's coming up right here.